deeper well. Well, looking for the water from a deeper well. This is a little snippet of a song from Emmylou Harris that I heard on public radio once many years back, and it has stuck with me. Well, looking for the water from a deeper well. The rest of the song never hooked me musically for whatever reason. The overall message of the song had a sort of Ecclesiastes feel to it. Been there, done that, didn't help. Well, looking for the water from a deeper well. Ecclesiastes says, I applied my mind to seek and search by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to human beings to be busy with. I saw all the deeds that are done under the sun, and see all is vanity and a chasing after wind. Well, looking for the water from a deeper well. Why? What's going on that we need to look for a deeper well? This is not new. This song was written at least 30 years ago. It picks up on a growing desire for depth and meaning in life. This yearning has been bubbling among us for some time as a society, not just among individuals, but among peoples. A yearning for more depth, for more connection. And there has been a narrowing happening among us as well. We're driven into consumer niches, sold divisiveness and fear, and yet along with this increase in fear in the politics and in public morality, there has been more reaching out across cultures, between and among different faith traditions. Many walls have been built up, but many more have been torn down. Interesting, isn't it? The parallel explosion of very shallow surface level exclusivity and narrow-mindedness alongside unprecedented cultural exchange and startling openness and mingling of spiritual practices and understanding. I remember an article from a conservative Christian magazine that warned its Christian readers against the practice of yoga because it would lead people into Hindu beliefs and away from pure Christianity, like yoga is some massive secret plot against Christianity. More and more people are experiencing other cultures and other religious practices and mixing things up to create a satisfying spiritual life independent of the exclusive rules of many religions. Religious conservatives and fundamentalists see this as a problem. I see this as the yearning of people searching for something meaningful, something deeper. So many people come through our doors searching for connection and meaning. They are lonely, empty. So many people, to one degree or another, feel empty, and they hunger for something more. Well, looking for the water from a deeper well. And why this increased interest in looking for a deeper well? What's wrong with what we've already got? The problem is that for too many it is empty. What do you do when you've spent your life trying to gain financial security only to lose the reason you wanted to be secure? What if you've spent a life chasing after a dream only to discover all of a sudden the dream never was attainable? What do you say when you spend your life making a name for yourself only to forget what your name means? What do you do when your well is empty? Well, looking for the water from a deeper well. Our society actually encourages this emptiness. Your emptiness is not a problem, only an as yet unmet market opportunity. So many people buy into this success-oriented, achievement-driven, market-manipulated, soul-draining way of being. When we find that we are empty, we reach for anything that can fill it. Romance, work, drugs, a fast car, big TV, status, power, anything, even religion. And yet we remain lonely. We remain yearning for something more. Everybody gets lonely. Everybody gets that gnawing emptiness every now and then, but when nothing works and no one seems to understand or care, when the students don't respond to your carefully prepared lectures, when the parishioners doze through your thoughtfully provoking sermons, when the attractive person you've been trying to impress just doesn't pick up on your hints, when your boss dismisses your suggestions, when the committee you've been steering can't seem to get anything done, we all know that sense of futility when you burn with such a passion for something and only get burned out. And we find ourselves alone and empty. What was it all for anyway? And it doesn't matter if it's burnout or depression or just general aridity. It is born of our desperate encounters with loneliness and emptiness. So what do we do? Where do we turn? There was a time, one point in my life when things seemed particularly empty and dry, and I jumped into Lake Michigan in the middle of December. I remember I was in the middle of a very difficult time with depression, and different people experience depression in different ways. For me, I actually will tell you about a psalm that I found that really hits the nail on the head and describes what it feels like. I am poured out like water. My bones are all out of joint. My heart is like wax. It has melted away within me. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. I am laid in the dust of death. This is the same psalm that begins, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's number 22. The next one is number 23, famous Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Great psalm, beautiful psalm. But the one just before it, number 22, oh. So after a week of my life tasting like ashes in my mouth, a friend suggested that as a winter solstice ritual, we jump into Lake Michigan. He has pictures. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Chicago, but my friend Daniel and I went out to the beach next to Lakeshore Drive, just off of 57th Street, and we stripped down to our swim trunks. Daniel looks at me solemnly and says, "This is my way of letting winter know that I am not going to hibernate this time." I looked out at that cold churning lake and tried not to think about what I was about to do. "Ready?" he said. "Yeah," and I took off running down the beach and into the water, and Daniel was right next to me. I bounded in 10 feet, 20 feet. I got up to my waist, if you're familiar. It's very shallow right there. And suddenly I stopped, and I looked down at my legs, and I said, "What?" And my legs looked up at me, and they said, "We're cold." Besides, he said we could stop, and I turned around, and sure enough, there's Daniel about 10 feet behind me, shouting, "I think this is far enough. Let's get this over with." And we both just dunked down under the water and ran back. Wrapping myself up in a towel, I yelled something like, "Take that, winter!" Not that eloquent, but, I was quite numb at the moment, exposing myself to the bitter winter wind and waves, and still able to at least cry out something from the depths of my wintering soul, I was still able to respond. So you're lonely. You're empty even. Find a way to respond. You don't necessarily need a shock to the system, but find a way to get meaning into the equation. Reach out. The answer almost seems too simple. We need to get out and do more together. We need community-orienting activities to starve the emptiness. We must engage with other people. Respond to the loneliness by reaching out. Climb up out of the well. Unfortunately, that's only half of the possible answer. The other half centers around the idea that to really respond to the emptiness, you must first be truly empty. To relieve the loneliness, you must learn to be alone. Sometimes the answer is to climb out of the well. Expand your experience, your engagement. Other times, the answer is to go deeper into the well. We have this notion that we're called to relieve one another's loneliness, to eradicate all emptiness for each other. And that's not true. We need lonely times in our lives. Loneliness is powerful. It keeps us grounded where we are. Henry Nouwen, an author that I've turned to over the years quite a bit, writes, "When our attention is driven away from ourselves and absorbed in what is happening around us, we become strangers to ourselves, people without a story to tell or follow up. The emptiness, the loneliness, the yearning in our lives is often an opening, an attention-getting for something greater, clues that such openings are there." And if you're following me, you'll see that I said in the beginning that in our loneliness we lose sight of who we really are. And now I'm saying that only in our loneliness can we discover our true selves. And this is not a paradox. This is not a religious puzzle sort of thing. It's simply this. To counter the endemic of emptiness and loneliness, to stop it from enveloping you, you need to really embrace it. It is within moments of withdrawal and lonely silence that you find both the emptiness and the hunger. The emptiness will pull you down. The hunger will free you if you will but follow it. Again, Henry Nouwen said, "Sometimes we know that without a lonely place in our lives there is danger. Somewhere we know that without silence, words lose their meaning. Without listening, speaking no longer heals. Without distance, closeness cannot cure. Our actions become empty gestures without a lonely place. The careful balance between silence and words, withdrawal and involvement, distance and closeness, solitude and community, forms the basis of the religious life. Should there be the subject, this should be the subject of our most personal attention, Henry Nouwen suggests. So we do talk a lot about community, about service and justice here in our congregation. But I say that all that action needs a source from within you, a source that will not simply drain you and burn you out. I'm reminded of another parallel, which I love, that brings the opposite element. I've been talking a lot about water in the well, and for a minute I want to tell you the same thing, but with fire. It's early in the Moses story. God appears as a burning bush, and I think it's just a fantastic image. What is God like? God's like a bush that's on fire, but the fire doesn't consume the bush. It's just on fire. But you've got to watch out. And I should have warned you earlier, perhaps, that you could probably be paying attention and put a little tick after each biblical reference. There's several so far, if you've caught them this morning. But one parallel in the story of the burning bush is found in the chapter immediately preceding it. Moses witnesses an Egyptian beating one of the Hebrew slaves, and Moses gets angry at this injustice, and he gets hot, and he rises up against that Egyptian, and he kills him. And then he gets scared, thinking that he's going to be found out, and he runs off into the desert for a few years, and he becomes a simple shepherd, and that's where he bumps into this burning bush. It's like God is saying, I burn, and I do not consume. Moses, you burn with your passion, and it just burns you up. You burn, and all you do is consume. The fire burns from an empty desperation. You need to tap into the source of life, the source that is your hunger, not your emptiness. You've got to watch out, though. I don't want to make this sound simple. You need to watch out because the emptiness and the hunger look a lot alike. If the fire that burns within you burns from that empty desperation, then it is a fire that will consume you. And that is not why this community is here. We are not here to fill one another's empty places. We are not here to serve our burning need to consume. Ours is not a consumer religion. We are not a consumer congregation. Ours is a community of faith and justice, where people with a longing come to get away from that emptiness, to follow the hunger, to get away from the market niche and tap into the source of your living. In Ecclesiastes it says, it is an unhappy business that God has given to human beings to be busy with, and I saw all the deeds that are done under the sun, and see all is vanity and a chasing after the wind. Anything you set yourself to do, any task or dream you pursue, any injustice you seek to make right, anything can be motivated by vanity and the need to fill that emptiness. Likewise, anything can be motivated by your hunger, that hunger in your soul. And one of my favorite quotes from Howard Thurman, do not ask what the world needs. Instead, ask what makes you come alive. Then go do that. Because what the world most needs is people who have come alive. To fight this invasive loneliness, this epidemic of emptiness, you need to find a lonely place, a place of solitude, a source. You need to know the well that will give you the deeper water. Before you can love your neighbor as yourself, you must learn to love yourself. For this, you need to learn to sit with your own solitude comfortably. Embrace that yawning cavern of emptiness within you. Do not seek to fill it. Move through it into the very source and find your hunger, that you may give out your whole heart with extravagance and endlessly renewing love. I know my source. I'm familiar with the lonely places in my life, with the wells I can go to for deep water when I am in need. That lonely place in my life is where I can find the strength to go out into the world and serve others. I know I'll be able to see and recognize my emptiness that sits there as well. When I can stand, even in the bitter winter of my soul, and remember that I am not alone. You are never alone. I can be about the business of healing the brokenness of the world. And I put it to you then, where do you find your source? Where is your hunger? Find your well. Well, looking for the water from a deep well. Find your wells and go out into the world. In a world without end, May it be so. Let us join